Within the genre, fighting games can be separated into different categories. We have arena fighters, platform fighters, 3D, 2D, anime, versus. Of course, some games can also fall into two different categories, but then there's games that don't really fall anywhere. Fighting games can be just as formulaic as they can be unique, and that's what I want to talk about today. To start off, I want to talk about a game that is unique in its own way, while still being able to easily fall into two of the categories mentioned, and that game is Pokken Tournament. Arena fighters are defined by their free and open movement, but also by gameplay so brain-dead simple that games under this subgenre just can't shine as something to play competitively. Which begs the question, why is Pokken such a different story? For starters, Pokken isn't just an arena fighter, it's also a 2D fighter at the same time. This is what makes the game unique as a fighting game, but also a viable game to play competitively. Pokken has what are known as phase shifts. This is how the game can have aspects from both arena and 2D fighters. Phase shifts are determined by specific variables. Certain moves will cause phase shifts during the field or arena phase, like forward range attacks, homing attacks, or specific moves in a Pokemon's moveset. Within the 2D duel phase, every move has a fixed amount of phase shift points, or PSP for short. The game has a hidden PSP counter that will shift into the field phase once it reaches 12 points. On another note, any combo that reaches 21 hits will cause the phase to shift as well. With the phase shift mechanic in mind, Pokken is a whole breath of fresh air in the fighting game genre, requiring much more unique strategies. Some Pokemon can excel in one phase, but be pretty average in the other. Like, zoning is a lot easier to deal with in the field phase due to its openness, but in the duel phase's 2D environment, zoning is much more nightmarish to fight. I could go more in depth about why I like Pokken so much, but we have to keep moving, so let's move on to another Nintendo exclusive game simply known as ARMS. What exactly is ARMS? It's a weird way to put it, but you could say it's more or less like a third-person shooter, but as a fighting game. Its gameplay is unique, competitive, and can be seen as the epitome of zoning. Sadly, the gameplay does eventually get quite repetitive. To spice up the basic gameplay loop, each character has some sort of exclusive tool. Ribbon Girl has multiple jumps, Helix can stretch, and Lola Pop can... Let's move on. If anything happened when making this video, it was me remembering how goddamn unique ARMS is. Yeah, like I said, the gameplay can get repetitive pretty fast. It isn't necessarily that deep, but that doesn't mean it isn't fun. While competitively a Pro Controller is more optimal, motion controls with Joy-Cons makes the game drastically more fun. In ARMS, each character has 3 sets of arms that you can mix and match, but you can also edit these loadouts to have something more personalized. Ribbon Girl doesn't have a shield arm by default, but you can give her one if you want. Do you not like the big Watt arm that's taking up a slot? Switch it out and get something more tuned to your style. While the gameplay is simple, loadouts being about as deep as it gets, the look of the game is amazing, and the soundtrack is a bop. Years after its initial release, I still find myself listening to these tracks over and over. Sorry, getting off topic here. Back to gameplay. ARMS' stages are quite sizable and very different from each other, making the game very focused on using the environment to weave around your opponent's attempts at an attack. The game doesn't offer much in terms of movement though, unless you're someone with movement-based abilities. The game isn't really about combos, but more so a poke and run 1-2 footsies game. Or should I say ARMSies? Yeah, that was a stupid joke. I might actually make a full video dedicated to ARMS, mostly just to gush about its graphical design and crazy addictive soundtrack, but moving on to our final game, we have one that you may have forgotten about. A game that's surprisingly fun, addictive, and can actually be quite competitive. I present to you WWE All-Stars. All-Stars isn't like any other WWE game before or after it. It's the definition of arcadey gameplay as far as wrestling goes. With that gameplay to back it up, unlike other WWE games, it can be a lot more competitively deep than you'd first think. Off the bat, let's talk about my favorite mechanics in this game. The reversal and counter systems the game has are insanely fun and surprisingly skill-based. Let's start with counters. On the right bumper, you have the strike counter. This is used to counter your opponent's attempt at striking you. This counter can in turn be countered back though, causing a counter chain which leads to a little mini game I like to call Who Fucks Up First. If you need help with the timing, you'll see a little RB or R1 symbol show up under your health bar. Just make sure you react fast though, because the symbol stays longer than the actual input window. On the left bumper, we have the grab counter. You can counter a grab counter, but the window for doing it is extremely short, so you mostly just end up being pushed away and staggered. The stagger of a grab counter leaves you a short window to follow up with a signature move if you have the bar, but be careful. If you let your opponent recover, they can grab counter any signatures or finishers that are initiated through grabs. Moving on to the reversal system, if you fail to counter a grab, you aren't fully out yet. Reversal windows are quite short and change between each type of move, so you'll find yourself having to do some trial and error as a beginner. Stay on your toes though, your opponent can reverse your reversal, but you do have countermeasures to that option, so be ready as you can cancel out a reversal by pressing the LB or L1 button at the same time as your opponent, ensuring that they have to take the throw. There's still a lot of things to go over, like the game's crazy combos, the acrobat's insane mobility, and more, but we'll have to cut it here. Like I said earlier, leave a comment below if you'd like a more in-depth look into any of these games, though I might end up making one about ARMS either way. All three of these games are extremely creative and unique and are worth checking out, so I've left some community discords in the description if I could find one. I'm Sylver, I hope you enjoyed this look into some unique fighting games, and remember to always blame the lag.